All righty, my third attempt here. There we go. I keep getting the sound wrong. My third attempt here to record. Let's see if this one does. My third day of fast from food and water, and announcing the 8 reasons um, in request to Tucker Carlson to kindly cover that the Orishnik Missile by uh, Putin has actually just ended nuclear war and made nuclear weapons obsolete. We just need to identify it. And so this is a call out of a 1 million-person petition asking Tucker Carlson to ask that of Putin, as well as to cover the Budapest Memorandum 30th anniversary, which is when um, Ukraine had given over their 1,700 nukes to Russia in exchange for a guarantee of sovereignty against Russian aggression, as signed and served as guardian by America, as America serves today in goodwill and good faith. So these are the 8. Those are 2 of the 8 reasons, and here are the others. I've covered those 2 in separate videos, but now I'll read the entire 8 as part of a single document, which culminates with our 40 cards of diplomacy and Trump's cards of peace. So mind me, this is my third day of no food or water, so I'm a little cotton mouth and small slight beginnings of a fever and a little foggy. Putin's Orishnik Missile just killed nuclear war. The Orishnik ended any pretense of justification for Nuke-Heads. And then the punchline quote: if the Orishnik Missile can obliterate 100% of NATO military targets without nukes, what justification is there to add Nukeheads? Aloha. My name is Raghu Giuffre, president and author of Raghu-nomics series. I'll be fasting from food and water, yes, from drinking water, and then of domestic shelter. So I've been staying out here for the last 3 days since the beginning of that fast with the Statue of Gandhi here in Waikiki, outside the zoo. I'm starting this December 5th, 2024, until Tucker Carlson finally agrees to cover the full glory of the Budapest Memorandum and the end of the era of nuclear weapons. And the reason why I'm targeting him, I'll explain in more detail later. I do so as my tribute to its 30th anniversary, this December 5th, 2024. We are holding this vigil right here at the Statue of Gandhi at the Honolulu Zoo in Waikiki. So it's taken me this long in order to get myself set up and be able to have a phone and a computer that works in order to do this, etc. So it's taken me 3 days in order to get myself up to speed. Come join our 1 million signature petition drive. Tucker Carlson, please cover the Budapest Memorandum and the end of the era of nuclear war. We also have a second and third petition, one for both Trump and Putin. Putin just ended all justification for nuclear warheads. Trump need but formalize this historic event. We ask both of them to do so. The journey finds its mandate and my tongue is, in addition to missing the teeth, but getting very cotton mouth here. We also have a second and third petition, one for both Trump and Putin. Putin just ended all justification for nuclear weapons with his Orishnik Missile. Trump need but formalize this historic event. We ask both of them to do so now. This journey finds its mandate and completion there with the Budapest Memorandum. It now comes full circle with this anniversary when Ukraine renounced their own 1,700 nukes as a gift to Russia and upon America's guarantee as guardian to Ukraine's sovereignty from all Russian aggression, as so requested by Yeltsin, the president of Russia at the time of President Clinton of America. I take this vigil for 8 primary reasons. Number 1, inaugurate the end of nuclear weapons. No more Nuke-Heads. Putin's Orishnik Missile is the death knell of all. It's a little anticlimactic, and it's been so soft, such a whimper that we don't realize Putin just ended any justification, just put an end to nuclear war and weapons. And we just need the world to wake up to it and say, hey, Putin, is this something you would consider? You now have military advantage. because of it. You have no justification for using nuclear weapons. What do you say? So this is the question, the first question we want Tucker to ask of Putin. So Tucker, what made me think of this is that Tucker Carlson ran to Moscow once again to do his interview with Putin and was it Lavrov? Remind me, I forget his name, the foreign minister, foreign secretary. And so I was like, ask Putin that with the superiority that it has the Oreshnik, would he consider dropping, adding Nuke-Heads? There's just no need for it. So Tucker said he went there to end World War III, but if you were to ask this one question, he could very well may inaugurate and formalize the end of nuclear war. So this isn't just a striking out at Tucker Carlson. This is simply adding the final crown to his goal. Number 2, launch a petition drive for 1 million signatures asking Tucker Carlson to kindly cover the Budapest Memorandum. So 1 million, it creates an energetic shift and momentum. And so we need to stop being consumers and actually step up and be participants. I am from the children of the boomers who believed that they could make a difference, and so they went and protested and, for example, put an end to the Vietnam War. We're a little bit less involved, and so we need that public participation as a karmic shift. So this is the reason why we're asking for those. Petition 1, Tucker Carlson, cover Budapest Memorandum and the end of nuclear warheads. Petition 2, President Trump, please consider this end to nuclear war, nukes. And petition 3, President Putin, is this the end of Nukeheads? And dare you mention Budapest Memorandum? So a man who presents himself as a great historian of detail of Russian-Ukrainian history somehow or other seems to have skipped right over the Budapest Memorandum because it is the poison pill of all Russian propaganda that America is the aggressor intruding upon Putin, when in fact it was Yeltsin that had brought President Clinton in to help transition Russia into the global economy in a modern world, of which the Ukraine peace agreement, the Budapest Memorandum, is the culmination, where Yeltsin is saying we don't have any interest to ever intrude upon Ukraine again. So we're more than happy to sign off that we won't use weapons, we won't tamper economically, politically, socially, we won't invade, and we'll even have America, Mr. Clinton, stand as a guarantor, as guardian to that. The reason why the Budapest Memorandum is so important is that it is a black and white testimonial to the era of brotherhood, a political marriage between President Clinton and Yeltsin, that they're there to try to convert the Russian over into European, American, and Western-style democracies, economy, and a modern nation. And so that was the story until Putin came in with his Bolshevik empire ambitions to undo the work of both Gorbachev and Yeltsin and overturn that. So that's the real story. That's the reason why the Budapest Memorandum is so critically important. And it's not possible to hide that truth until once that story of the Budapest Memorandum is covered. And then we'll rebrand. I'm rebranding the Budapest Memorandum as the Buddha's Memo of Peace. Number 4, this is the 4th reason. Introduce the moral, political, and legal mandate of Buddha's Memo as set forth for America as guardian to Ukraine's sovereignty against Russian aggression as contracted by Russia itself. As I just had mentioned above. Number 5, to offer my own small sacrifice and fellowship of that brethren creed of life and limb is offered to Ukraine's soldier of freedom. These guys are giving so much in order to fight their freedom, justifiably so, not as proxies of America, but more akin to, the Jews fighting Hitler. what Hitler was in the killing of 6 million Jews to the Jewish people is what the Soviets and Stalin and Russia is to the Ukrainians. So we keep saying that America is using them, but actually, this is a fight that goes back generations, and this is their last chance of breaking free of that horrific, horrible extermination. 6 million Ukrainians, and just in one of Stalin's purges, among others, throughout their history. So I'm useless as a fighter. I'm an Italian, so giving up food is my version of severe sacrifice. So anyway, that is my presentation done in honor and in weapon choice of weapon that Gandhi used. Number 6, introduce the 9 cards of negotiation along with the trump cards of peace. So this is the culmination of 3 years worth of work, about 4 or 5 booklets, maybe 25, 30, about 40 essays. This is the culmination, which ended up with an actual peace proposal. And so the 9 cards of negotiation is sort of resetting the terms that there has to be a give and take. The best example is the Cuban Missile Crisis, wherein Kennedy told Khrushchev, the premier of the Soviet Union, you must take your nuclear missiles out of Cuba. And Khrushchev said, okay, if we're going to do that, then you must remove your missiles from Turkey and all of Europe. So this was a give and take. And so an example of that, I'm not saying that this has to be it, but an example of what a proper give and take would be, as Putin is demanding for Ukraine, America demands of North Korea, and for all the same reasons. So every issue that Putin has raised about Ukraine is very much true of North Korea's existential threat to America. And I say that being here in Hawaii doesn't really mean as much to the rest of the country that he sent 2 nuclear missile tests over Hawaii's way. We're on the front lines here. It's very real to us, as Tulsi Gabbard had pointed out. And so you can't have actually what happened is Putin is a strong leader. He knows how to make the demands as a strong leader should. America's been weak in this regard. So as Putin has been demanding of Ukraine, America should have been demanding of North Korea, and this is our opportunity to do so. So that's an example of the give and take. My definition of peace is an equilibrium of justice. When Hitler went in there and killed 6 million Jews, and then says, let's have peace, it's not peace because there is not an equilibrium of justice. When Kennedy asked for the end of Putin, Russian nukes, and Khrushchev said, you have to get yours out of Turkey, that's an equilibrium. So it would be an equilibrium of justice, a true peace, if Putin were to do for North Korea as he's demanding of Ukraine. So that's, creating a true negotiation. And then that gives us Trump's cards of peace, which is to say he's the wheeler dealer. He is the deal maker and deal closer. So the more cards that we can give to President Trump, the better the deal he can make. And right now, Putin holds all the cards. And so we are here to build out an additional set of cards of negotiation for Trump, and that is to introduce the 40 cards of diplomacy as an example. The Budapest Memorandum resets the moral and political and legal legitimacy of having America there in Ukraine. It was asked by Russia to do so to save their sovereignty. So each of these is a negotiating card. So the 40 cards of diplomacy is an example. The 40 cards of diplomacy that converts nuclear threats into the routines of foreign trade, of everyday tit-for-tat diplomacy. So an example of that is Putin going in and throwing the French out of Africa. And this really was, just a surprise blow to Macron, because he had been, in his mind, the peacemaker between Russia and the West in this war, and sort of snubbing America to reach out in goodwill to Putin. And then for no apparent reason, Putin turns around and throws France out of 3 of their African countries. So Macron responded, well, I'm going to send troops in to Ukraine. And Putin said, well, then we'll nuke you. And so he backed off. So this is just a one of dozens, if not hundreds of examples where Putin responds with nukes, where other countries would respond with foreign diplomacy tit for tat. So as an example of that tit for tat, if if Macron would say, listen, if you want us not to send troops into Ukraine, then you got to take your troops out of the African countries. That would be an example of a foreign policy diplomacy without nukes. And so the 40 cards of diplomacy converts these Putin nuclear threats of retaliation into what is a proper international diplomacy. And then introduce the terms of peace around a set of obligations, as I talked about earlier. Number 7, and Putin's nuke mongering. So once you go through these 40 cards of diplomacy, you will find that Putin has really been, he is, the boy that cried wolf way too many times. And in so doing, simply expedited the fact that nukes are actually obsolete. So Zelensky has crossed every red line that Putin has made of nuclear retaliation and has not been able to do so. And this is not for lack of conviction and seriousness on Putin's part, but just that the modern world just simply does not allow for that level of retaliation where everybody else has to suffer. So China's been in there. It's like, sorry, Putin, you just can't use nukes. And Saudi Arabia is sort of whispering, inferred, listen, you can't use nukes. And India's like, you definitely can't use nukes. So there is a level of accountability that Russia and America did not have back in the 60s when Khrushchev and Kennedy were going at it. They were two countries unconstrained. Today, those constraints are there, and that's true of Pakistan and India, and even North Korea and Iran and Israel. So Putin simply proved why they have gone obsolete. He's demonstrated it, thank you to Zelensky, by crossing those lines, and this demonstrating the point. And now with this technology upgrade of the Orishnik Missile, it is formal that it's not just a matter that it's like chemical weapons. You can't use them in a modern world. But now the Orishnik has made that it's nuclear weapons are also technologically, they're just primitive. They're obsolete. Anyway, so we can actually have a complete peace. This is a complete peace program that provides a significantly greater level of balance to the negotiations. And so that takes us to number 8. Putin is actually significantly more compliant than at any other time before, because he has been grossly overextended in spite of whatever the Russian propaganda and Putin supporters say. And so that is number 8, to celebrate Zelensky's win of America's conventional war over Putin, which is to say that Russia's forces are so grossly overextended that if NATO were to go in now, it would obliterate them. So they're hardly winning, and that's with a 15 to 20 person advantage. But that's only part of it. That's how it originally started, that Zelensky single-handedly won America's conventional war against Russia. And that's not always true. About 6 years ago, China and Russia had their war games, and Putin was swaggering that we can beat America on an open battlefield conventional war. Well, that is no longer true. Hence, there is no challenge from Putin to do so, other than nuclear retaliation should America, France, Germany, Italy dare send in more weapons. And so, again, people will push back and say, no, he's been winning, but he's been winning how? So first I heard that he got 1 million rounds of artillery from North Korea. And then I heard that's now up to 10 million rounds of artillery, along with arms from China, Iran, Pakistan, along with manpower from Pakistan, Africa, Nepal. And so then I began to wonder, if Putin did not get that 10 rounds of ammunition, and now the 10,000 soldiers from North Korea and the soldiers from Nepal and Pakistan and Africa, would he have lost the war? And I believe that Putin thinks that he would have lost the war, otherwise he would not have gone and asked for them, which is to say that Zelensky just beat Russia. That if Russia did not have these supplements, that they would have lost the war. And they say, well, yeah, but then America is supporting Ukraine. And that's our point. Yes, so America is supporting, and therefore Zelensky just won America's conventional war with Russia. So this is quite extraordinary. And it's very important for us to point this out, because that adds a critical card of negotiation to President Trump's cards of negotiation. That, listen, you've lost the war. If you didn't have these weapons from Iran and North Korea and China, it would have been over. Which is to say that Zelensky has now beat Russia with the conventional war, and now is single-handedly taking on the entire axis of evil, as President Bush Jr. had called it. Hey, we're doing live video. So Zelensky has won America's conventional war, and now is single-handedly taking on all of the axis of evil. And so it's important to make that point to Putin. It's like, you've lost the war. You're getting all this help. And if we were to supplement, it's very distracting. Can you wait? I'm only going to be another 10 minutes. Martin? Yeah. Can you just wait 10 minutes? You don't have to leave. Just don't distract me. So it's quite extraordinary. Everything is actually to Trump's advantage to be able to negotiate a piece of balance, a balance of, a peace negotiation of true balance. And that's what we're doing here. And that's the reason why, that's the real reason why I'm doing this fast, because we can end nuclear war. We can provide President Trump with an extraordinary hand, strong hand, and potentially. Number one, so I gave the 8 reasons in summary, and this is in detail. Number 1, inaugurate the end of nuclear weapons. No more Nuke-Heads. 6, historic convergences of peace. There are 6 historic junctures converging all at the same time to end nuclear weapons as a military option of war. This has never happened before. This is the first window of opportunity for a new world free of nuclear war. First event, Orishnik missiles have 100% military success without Nuke-Heads. Second event, global mandate. Third event, Putin bluff is end of nukes as a viable military option. Fourth event, Trump inauguration. Fifth event, open to third-party terms. Sixth event, Putin receptive. Russia softened by Zelensky, as I just covered. So now to detail those 6 events. First event, Orishnik Missile offers 100% military success without Nuke-Heads. Putin's latest ICBM Orishnik Missile. He needs the attention. Putin's latest, but he has been here. He's been doing the vigil here at the Statue of Gandhi with me. Just make sure there we go. We need to get more Gandhi there. Okay, there we are. Putin's latest ICBM Orishnik missile obliterates any justification for nuclear weapons. Kudos to Scott Ritter and Colonel McGregor for making the case inadvertently for the end of all nuclear warheads, or as we call them, Nukeheads. They offered grueling details of Putin's latest missile of such advanced technology that it can hit military targets throughout Europe within meters of accuracy and at hypersonic speeds of 8,000 miles per hour. There is no time to get out of their way, and they are bunker busting. Putin says America cannot stop them. There is no Western countermeasures to Putin's Orishnik missile. If the Orishnik can obliterate 100% of NATO military targets without nukes, what justification is there to add Nuke-Heads? Nuke-Heads are no longer an act of war, but weapons of mass terrorism. Scott details how the Orishnik missile wiped out an entire Ukrainian arms factory with a single strike and little civilian casualty. If the factory is wiped out, Why then slaughter 50,000 residents of a town as a nuclear warhead would? The bombing success removes any military excuse for a nuclear warhead. The Orishnik has unwittingly become the greatest nuclear peace initiative, for it retires nuclear weapons as an obsolete dinosaur of the last century. Putin's latest missile attacks has unwittingly canceled any and all excuses for Russia to ever use nuclear warheads again. Zelensky forced Putin's hand to demonstrate why nuclear weapons are now obsolete with the technology of a 21st century world. Bravo, Putin and all his talking heads, for making our case for the end of nuclear war. Let's raise our voice. It need but just loud enough for President Trump to hear. Dear President Trump, will you join our demand for this end of Nuke-Heads? Join me in this humble effort for all those wishing to see an end this coming World War III. Reaching out to President Trump, Tucker Carlson, Putin. That is our. So that's event number one. Event number two. Second event, global mandate. Putin's escalation of nuclear terror provides the global focus necessary for the world to finally come together as a single voice for this as a number one priority of all social political issues of the day. Years ago, Trump insisted this was the greatest threat facing the world as a counterpoint to the threat faced by global warming. Putin is our marketing arm. Greater he can terrorize the world with his threats of nuclear holocaust, greater the public participation to press our demand for this end of Nuke-Heads. Dear Putin, every Orishnik missile you fire at Ukraine, another 200 to 400 people join in this demand for the end of nuclear war, and now to our call for the end of Nuke-Heads. This may position you history's greatest marketing genius for peace, and thank you for that. Third event, Putin bluff is end of Nuke-Heads as a viable option. Zelensky has crossed every red line to Putin's threats of nuclear retaliation without a nuclear response. This is not a reflection of Putin's resolve or his bluff, but rather the final testament that the age of nukes are no longer feasible in such an interconnected world wherein China, India, Saudi Arabia, and the others are all pressuring Putin not to use nukes. Back in the day of President Kennedy and Premier Khrushchev, there was no second players to America and Russia to tell them to back down. Today, the global market has built up far too many partners to so-called nuclear superpowers, and so making nuclear confrontation relatively impossible. That is not Putin's act of restraint or lack of resolve, but a wonderful testament to how matured our world has become as a single community. Bravo, the day as one people has found its milestone here where it counts most, peace over nukes. This is true of other nuclear powers wherein their red lines have been threatened and crossed, and yet they too could not use their nukes. Yes, Pakistan, I'm talking of you, Israel too, and of course North Korea. Putin's nuke mongering has overused their effective terror as a deterrent, and in so doing simply expedited the obvious that nukes are simply obsolete as a foreign policy ploy. The boy who called wolf once too many times has now found its latest, with Putin whispers of nukes a dozen too many times. The fourth event, Trump inauguration. Trump's January 20th inauguration sets a hard deadline and so forces a demand for resolution. No other global war has had this level of pressure for a clearly defined end of hostilities within just days. Trump's inauguration is the negotiation, the world's great secret weapon. Fifth event, open to third-party terms. First global world war confrontation without clearly defined counterparties to set the terms of engagement. Is Russia the deciding factor, or is it Trump, or is it Biden enforcing Putin's hand to destroy Trump's prospects, or is it Europe or China? This means there has never been a world war of this magnitude wherein a third party and the public could so dramatically set the basic terms of settlement. We are as much a player of these negotiations as Trump, Putin, Biden, and China, if you so choose to be. The 30th anniversary celebration of the Budapest Memo is a seat at the table, or more likely, they are the terms setting the table itself. The sixth event, Putin receptive, Russia softened by Zelensky. Zelensky has drained 50 to 80% of Russia's immediate military and economic resources. Putin has been softened up by Zelensky's fight for freedom, and in so given us a very responsive Putin, who now comes with a flexibility like never before seen of his rule. We cover this in more detail under number 7. Zelensky just won America's conventional war with Russia. Number 2. So that was all of that was the first reason why I'm doing this fast. Number 2, launch petition drive for 1 million signatures asking Tucker Carlson to kindly cover the Budapest Memorandum and the end of nuclear war. Never has ending nuclear war been so easy, fast, or of greater reach. We need but raise our voice to demand as much. There are no moving parts here. Nothing more needs to be done. Putin's Orishnik has already made nuclear weapons obsolete. The faster the world knows it, the sooner we can end it. Putin's escalation has stirred billions to pause behind a single will. If you wish it, say it. Today, let us speak as one people. Trump will hear us, so will Putin. Can we get 1 million Americans to join our call? 100 million citizens of the world? 1 billion? Trump is the most accessible American president ever. He has vowed to begin his first day with the end of the nuclear holocaust of this growing World War III. Nor has Russia ever had such incentive to retire their nuclear weapons. Putin's Orishnik Missile is the natural replacement. History is on our side, so is the timing. The Budapest Memorandum is in honor of the sacred renunciation of nuclear war. It was done indeed with Ukraine's giving of all 1,700 of their nukes over to Russia. So great their dedication to peace. Today, it's Russia's turn to complete the circle by renouncing their nukes in celebration of this 30th anniversary of the Budapest Memorandum. Are you going to put your stamp here in this most extraordinary of history? Come join our march for the end of it's a vigil. End of nuclear weapons and sign for no more Nuke-Heads. So that's the... So here's petition 1, Tucker Carlson. So here's the first petition. Putin's Orishnik missiles just killed nuclear war. Please sign petition. Tucker Carlson is in Moscow right now to interview Putin and stop World War III, as Tucker puts it. We request Tucker Carlson to ask Putin if he would consider forsaking nuclear weapons now that he has this hypersonic Orishnik missile. The Orishnik allows Russia to reach all NATO military targets throughout Europe with no American countermeasure. If the Orishnik missile can obliterate 100% of NATO's military targets throughout Europe without nukes, what justification is there to add Nuke-Heads? We are asking for the end of Nuke-Heads, not missiles. Putin may consider this because Russia now has the military advantage. Tucker need but ask Putin. We request Tucker to kindly ask Putin this simple question. Tucker went to Russia to stop World War III. He may have just ended the age of nuclear war along with it. We get to end World War III by simply offering our signature here and our humble request of Tucker, which I'll begin doing after I finish this video. Please sign and forward to as many people as possible. So there's also an online petition, and that is in our down below. This is offered by Raghu-nomics in its Ukraine-Russian Peace Initiative, aka European. Details. The Orishnik ended any pretense of justification for Nukeheads. Putin Technologied himself right out of nuclear war and made Nukeheads obsolete for the first time for all time. Putin's latest ICBM Orishnik missile obliterates any justification for nuclear weapons. It strikes within meters of accuracy. It travels at hypersonic speeds of 8,000 miles per hour. They are bunker busting. Putin says America cannot stop them. There is no Western countermeasure to Putin's Orishnik missile. The Orishnik missile can obliterate 100% of NATO's military targets without nukes. What justification is there to add Nukeheads? Nukeheads are no longer an act of war, but weapons of mass terrorism. Orishnik missile wiped out an entire Ukrainian arms factory with but a single strike and little civilian casualty. If the factory is wiped out, why then slaughter 50,000 residents of a town as a nuclear warhead would? The bombing success removes any military excuse for adding a nuclear warhead. The Orishnik has unwittingly become the greatest nuclear weapon of peace and may well have just signed the death warrant for nuclear weapons everywhere. Putin's latest missile attacks have unwittingly canceled all military excuses for Russia to ever use nuclear warheads again. We request Tucker Carlson to simply ask Putin. Putin may give it a fair consideration. Let's find out. Ask him. That brings us to the second and third partition. The third parts of this petition, part 2. Ask Putin about the Budapest Memorandum on this 30th anniversary of its signing. Number 3, would President Trump consider ending Nukeheads too? And so those were the summary. And so in detail, part 2, ask Putin about Budapest Memorandum. Today is the 30th anniversary of the Budapest Memorandum, which was 3 days ago when I first started this fast. Russia agreed to never tamper or invade Ukraine. Russia offered this if Ukraine handed over the 1,700 nukes. Ukraine agreed to give over their nukes if America guaranteed their sovereignty against Russian aggression. America did so, along with England, Ireland, France, and China. So Putin says that he doesn't want NATO's intrusion into Ukraine. Well, that intrusion was brought in by Yeltsin himself once Ireland, France, and England signed to the Budapest Memorandum. So each and every one of the issues that Putin has made in his delusions of a NATO American aggression towards Russia is decimated by the Budapest Memorandum. We request Tucker okay. What better way to celebrate this 30th anniversary than for Russia to now renounce their own nukes as well? We will have gone full circle. Part 3, ask Trump if he would consider renouncing nukes. Okay, so those are the 3 petitions, and I'll begin passing those out. And now on to the third reason, the 30th anniversary of the Budapest Memorandum, December 5th. So I was really going after Tucker on this one, but that has changed now that I want Tucker to ask Putin about ending nuclear war. Tucker has blatantly avoided any mention of the sacred event of the Budapest Memorandum. The Budapest Memorandum is the kryptonite to Putin's supporters and all those looking to blame America rather than the true story of Putin's transgression upon this Budapest Memorandum. The Budapest Memo was signed upon Yeltsin's request of President Clinton. Yeltsin was the president of the new Russia, founded upon the ashes of the old Soviet Union. A priority of Yeltsin was to have Ukraine's 1,700 nuclear missiles left over from the fall of the Soviets. Clinton agreed to Yeltsin's ongoing request and delivered each and every one of those nukes in America's bidding to Russia's appeal. This price offered and initiated was by Yeltsin himself. He prodded America to kindly step in and guarantee Ukraine's sovereignty from Russian aggression. Yeltsin pushed Clinton and did so for years, all to close this deal. America delivered as Russia had so wished, so softly demanded. This was of Russia's doing, not America, or that terrible lie of U.S. expansion upon Putin, as he has so convinced his followers. The Budapest Memorandum is the poison pill to all such Russian propaganda, and therefore this single document has been buried throughout this entire debate by a terrible wall of silence that looks no less sinister as any conspiracy. Therefore, no mention of this memo of Budapest, whether from Tucker Carlson, Jeffrey Sachs, John Mearsheimer, Colonel McGregor, Clayton Morris, John Ritter. For years now, they raised their authority as the teller of the real story with 1,000 details, but for this one, a single mention of the Budapest Memorandum, the kind of slant otherwise expected of a true Putin troll. Why, how such universal silence for each and every one of them? Today, they will hide no longer. I am launching this petition drive for 1 million signatures, now requesting Tucker Carlson to stop hiding from this Budapest Memorandum and its, number 1, cause of justice to the valiant people of Ukraine and their stand against Putin's betrayal of this non-aggression pact, and 2, in honor of America's good faith commitment to hold true as guardian to Ukraine's sovereignty from the terrors of Russia, and number 3, as contracted by the administration of Putin's own leader, President Yeltsin, of the newfound Russia of 1922. Yes, Putin is party to this non-aggression agreement as a lead member of Yeltsin's inner circles and his immediate successor. This 30th anniversary completes the circle laid upon the highest ideals of Yeltsin's ambitions. He spoke for the hopes of the day of all people, believing we can live in a world free of nuclear war. It all started there in Ukraine with this commitment of 1,700 nukes. It was their only weapon of security against Russian aggression, yet given away in their faith and commitment to this greater peace of a nuclear-free world, a price they pay once more in life, limb, and the future as a nation of any meaning because of Putin's betrayal of it. We asked Tucker Carlson to finally honor this story of the Ukraine people. Tucker, you have diligently offered all the finer points of Putin wished to share with the world for 3 years now. Please offer the same in this special occasion, the commemoration of this 30th anniversary of the Budapest Memorandum of the valiant people of Ukraine. And then I go on to say to rebrand the Budapest Memorandum as the Buddhist Memo of Peace. Simply, this makes it, Buddhist Memo of Peace just makes it easier for people, and the Asians will love it. All those Buddhist Hindu nations. Number 4, so this is the 4th reason why I am doing this fast from food and water. Number 4, to introduce the moral, political, and legal mandate Buddhist Memo sets forth for America as guardian of Ukraine's sovereignty against Russian aggression, as contracted by Russia itself. Russia contracted America to stop Putin's invasion. That is the Budapest Memorandum and its 30th anniversary we celebrate today, which was 3 days ago. President Ronald Reagan is credited. Mind me, I'm getting so lightheaded and so cotton-mouthed. So I am rushing through this because I don't know how much longer I can last without getting nauseous or faint. President Ronald Reagan is credited for winning the Cold War, but very few know where the beginning of that success all started. It was March 8th, 1983, in the Sheraton Twin Towers, Orlando, Florida. It began with Reagan's speech to the National Association of Evangelicals, wherein he called the Soviets the evil empire. I remember it because critics pushed back hard, calling it dangerous political theater. Only now do I appreciate that this was the defining moment of the entire Cold War. From that moment on, the moral high ground had been clearly, solidly, and irrevocably set to stone. History. From that perch, we found the mandate and sense of divine right and conviction that the price was well worth the cost, the resolve to hold steady in the face of Soviet threats of nuclear holocaust. I'm saying this as a kid of the 60s and 70s, where it happened one time, got under the desk as a practice for, a nuclear strike by Russia, and how scared the world became once Reagan said, "I'm sorry, we're going to match you 1 for 1 because you dear Soviets, you're terrorizing the world, you're threatening everybody. We cannot allow that." And so once he did that, those that were trying to pacify the Soviets were scared that it was Reagan that was the warmonger. So from the perch, we found the mandate and sense of divine right and conviction that the price was well worth the cost. So Reagan won that war by being willing to spend the money. Hang on. Can you meet me at the Gandhi statue? I'm finishing up the video press release.
Yes.
All right. I'll see you here. From that perch, we found the mandate and sense of divine right and conviction that the price was well worth the cost, the resolve to hold steady in the face of Soviet threats of nuclear holocaust, a true high ground to the harshest of critics. In other words, it wasn't just political posture or canceling them. Reagan actually genuinely held the high ground in the debate. And the grounding for a genuine reassurance to allies spooked by Reagan's counter to Soviet aggression. So I happened to be coming back from India. I was going to boarding school there. I was a Hare Krishna kid, born in LA and off to boarding school at the age of 11. I came back on my 5th return from India, stopped off in England just as Reagan was visiting. And my sympathies were with the protesters because I really thought that Reagan was the, hey guys, that Reagan was the warmonger. So it's only in retrospect that I appreciate, which is true of anybody that was of a Democrat calling for peace, that, somebody threw food over here. Hey guys, this is for you. Yucky. Put my hands off here. It wasn't until Reagan that followed the collapse that people could finally see what Reagan was talking about. See, quite the contrast where today's conservatives hold to the U.S. as the evil empire. $200 billion, too big a commitment. You're throwing food at me and on the computer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
$200 billion, too big a commitment from the $25 trillion budget already spent in the last 3. We spent $25 trillion here in America. Hey guys, so we're being visited by. 200 billion, too big a commitment from the 25 trillion budget already spent in the last 3 years. That is 25 trillion for all local, state, Fed, and NGO programs spent right here in America since Putin's war began. Check those numbers. I was dumbfounded by it too. So it's 25 trillion, guys, $25 trillion. So you're actually throwing the food on me. Somehow Ukraine's magical 200 billion, less than 1% of America's total government costs, would suddenly solve America's homelessness, student debt, the U.S. debt crisis. So the flapping of the wings is supposed to be good for the heart, according to Ayurveda. Very auspicious. Somehow Ukraine's magical 200 billion, less than 1% of America's total government costs, would suddenly solve America's homelessness, student debt, the U.S. debt crisis, the drug epidemic, falling education standards, crumbling infrastructure. That massive $25 trillion spent since Putin's invasion began by America, 25 spent by America, has not fixed even one of these. We spent $25 trillion. We haven't fixed not one problem. Not even slowed them. And yet Ukraine's critics insist that their magical 200 billion, less than 1% of that 25 trillion, would fix all of these problems. So this is the contrast between, this is the next paragraph. Here we find the contrast between those Republicans made in President Reagan's image and their commitment. Just lost my screen. Here we find the contrast between those Republicans made in President Reagan's image with their commitment to peace from strength. Compare them to those we have today. This breed of conservatives talk all the same logic and reasoning pushed by Democrats in their fights to stall and stop Ronald Reagan and each step in turn of his campaign against the evil empire until the day the Soviet Union fell. Then suddenly not a single word about their failures to understand the ways of peace through strength. Buddhist Memo, peace will reset America with that same moral high ground for the first time since Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and so too light our way forward to that great American cause of freedom for all people. That is the blessing bequeathed upon the simplest of honors to this magnificent document that history lays upon our laps with the Budapest Memo, Buddhist Memo of Peace, all there in this 30th anniversary. People consider the end of the Cold War as the culmination of Reagan's success, but that is not the marker of it. The true bookend is found right here in the Buddha Memo for peace. That marks the day President Yeltsin had officially taken President Clinton as his own mentor in their task to shed the last of the old Soviet Union. America now designated guardian of peace by Russia itself. There, America still stands vigil against the worst of tyrants of Russian yore that would so dare superimpose upon the people and nation of Ukraine once again the old ways of Soviet conquest. Buddha's Memo is the victory pillar of a friendship reaching the heights of today's darkest hour as a tap upon the shoulder of our collective conscience. It whispers this grand reminder to a time of trust and partnership in the great remaking of the old Soviets from their ways of terror and dysfunction, and to a people transformed by the ways of democracy, freedom, and a modern economy. Today's conservatives don't believe in such things in their disdain of Democrats, but the Russians of those days did, and their thankfulness to America. So this was, of course, being written before Trump had won, and the disdain of the fallacy that we live in a democracy and freedom. Now that Trump has won, now their faith has been reassured. But Ukraine is an extension of that of their short shelf life of disillusionment. Buddha's Memo is the very pillar of a friendship reaching the heights of today's darkest hours, a tap upon the shoulder of our collective conscience. It whispers this grand reminder to the time of trust and partnership in the great remaking of the old Soviet. Okay, today's conservatives don't believe in such things as their disdain of Democrats, but the Russians of those days did. Their thankfulness to it. So the Russians really believed in, America, as the cause for freedom, as the guarantor of freedom. And that was personified with the Budapest Memorandum. The Russians led the rush to 1 million enterprises with the world for the first time, all made possible upon the foundation of freedom Yeltsin so wanted for his nation. A far cry of Putin's claims as a conquered people but the spoils of war by the West. So he keeps saying that, we were Russia was the product of America spoiling. It was just the opposite. Clinton was in there doing everything he could to help transition Russia into democracy, free markets, the global economy. A far cry of Putin's claims as a conquered people with but the spoils of war by the West. No, that is Putin's delusions talking, not of those by Russians who led with such pride in the strongest of brotherhood of America's finest. That is the story of the Budapest Memo, Buddha's memo of peace, a story started in the trusting friendship of Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev for the grandest of political marriage we beget of Yeltsin and Clinton. Buddha's memo is the child of that marriage and heir to this brand of peace. So, well, I'll talk about it a little bit more. Therein the lie told off of that American broke their promise to Gorbachev not to take an inch past Germany. America did not break that promise. Yeltsin did. He invited, yes, warmly invited President Clinton. America, please step forward to help Ukraine. We did not take the Eastern nations that we were given. They were given, literally, repeatedly. That is the real story. That was not a NATO doing, but Russia's. Nothing infuriated Putin more than this great betrayal by Yeltsin and Gorbachev. Putin's distrust and disdain is not truly of America, but with those of his own leaders who set forth such freedoms for Russia and Ukraine, like all the satellite countries of the old Soviets. It's their legacy that Putin so fiercely fights against today, with all to destroy their legacy of freedoms. Unfortunately for Putin, America, the spoiler of his plans and victory for 3 years now, Buddha's memo of peace is the undeniable proof of this real story, the badge of a hero's notice of a mandate made and held 3 decades before to protect those of Ukraine's sovereignty in black and white, undeniable, unchangeable, no matter the mastery of deception so vividly repeated with Putin's supporters. Therefore, they will not touch or even mention Buddha's memo of peace, the Budapest Memorandum. Today that changes. Tucker Carlson, yea, please tell this story of Ukraine in this memo of peace for Buddha, hence my fast till you do, in honor of the 30th anniversary of the Budapest Memorandum. A lead detail of that story is with the Eastern Bloc nations that began joining NATO in those days. They did so in this spirit of brotherhood with America. It was giddy excitement of tens of millions now stepping into the myriad opportunities to be found in the West and had for the first time after a great many decades of suppression, torture, extermination, much as those living under Putin's invasion of Ukraine once more. Buddha's memo of peace is the monument of America's ideal as the extraordinary wanted most by Russia. Today it lays and tethers upon the lies of a fictional intrusion by the West. These rantings are windows to the paranoia of Putin's childhood, fantasies of Bolshevik empire, and their seething hatred of NATO's power to stop it. Buddha's memo is the antidote for all those infected with this Putin delusion. Today, Buddha's memo of peace offers a clear choice between those of Yeltsin's vision of the heady years of that great Russo-American brotherhood, or all the horrors of Bolshevik ploys of war, terror, and conflict found in Putin's dreams of Soviet conquest, and the apocalypse that always follows. Yeltsin or Putin, today the 30th anniversary is a choice between these two worlds. Buddha's memo of peace rips open that iron curtain for a peak of beauty found in the peace and prosperity that was America's gift to all those escaping the evil empire as we have of Putin's breeding. That, my friends, is the real story behind NATO's march upon Putin's borders of petty superstition. It was a welcome mat to America in honor of the request and friendship of President Yeltsin personally, continuously, over the years, and with the joy and pride for the best of the Russian people. America, President Clinton, the guest of honor, not colonial invasion, as Putin is today. Most telling of Putin's hoax about American intrusion upon Russia is that so many of us today were there and saw firsthand this story play out as we looked upon with such disbelief of the impossible of those Soviet communists now rushing to the ways of American freedom, market, and opportunity. Come on, you guys, you old buggards. Surely you must remember, you should know better than to allow Putin's propaganda to say different from those of your own firsthand experience of those extraordinary days. President Clinton, please step forward and tell us, remind us of those most magical of America's triumphs since the fall of Hitler. If you can remember, if you can read these histories, if you now see this real story Please stand and raise your voice for the Ukrainian people in their celebration of this most sacred of histories, documents, agreements now given once more, and this 30th anniversary of the Budapest Memorandum, Buddhist memo of peace to the world. I just don't know how people don't see it. Your own experience from 30 years ago, and now Putin's saying, oh, by the way, America's been closing in, we could have destroyed Russia 1,000 times over back then. Why didn't we? No, we instead spent our best efforts, our best man, President Clinton, as a man of economic savvy, the best president of economics until that day, was there doing his best to help Yeltsin, as Yeltsin wanted, to transition his countries. Anyway, YF see the stridency I held for Putin's invasion, yet I recognize he just ended nuclear war, and so my shift from accusation to the request of the end of Nuke-Heads. So I've just been, seething, of course, watching this play out, watching people fall for Putin's propaganda. The Budapest Memorandum, you can't argue American warmongering with the Budapest Memorandum. Jesus Christ, man. But once I heard that Tucker Carlson was in Moscow, and I was like, hey, you got to ask Putin, would he consider ending Nuke-Heads for it? So now, I softened up too, because alrighty. So then that was as far as I really got to write in detail. And then number 5 of the reasons I'm doing the fast, offer my own small sacrifice and fellowship of that brethren creed to their own price paid as Ukraine soldier of freedom. And so if you want to join that fight, please sign. 6, introduce the 9 cards of negotiation along with Trump's cards of peace. Guys, we have so much. This is not the first time we're negotiating with Russia over nuclear peace treaties. And if we simply reference those, the presidents beforehand provide us an extraordinary resource guide. And, they had to work these things out. Reagan, Kennedy, Clinton. So they were doing these things for the first time. We can call upon those. And that's what these 9 cards of negotiations, Trump's cards of peace do. So Ukraine for North Korea is an example. That is just one of the 9 cards of negotiation. And so that is to say, to introduce terms of peace around a new set of obligations and balance to Russia's demands upon Ukraine. So as an example of how that plays out with North Korea. Putin doesn't get to use the same nuclear threat. Oh, so this one's really important. So we keep saying, America's starting World War III by going into Ukraine. And then it was like, well, by supplying Ukraine with weapons. Then it was like by supplying missiles. So there's all these red lines how America's starting World War III. But the flip side of that is that if we leave Ukraine, is that to say that we will never have to worry about nuclear holocaust from Putin again? Are we really sure that Putin wouldn't use it to defend North Korea, to defend Iran, to defend China's invasion of Taiwan, to defend Serbia, to defend his newly justified You really can't wait just 10 more minutes to make all this noise?
I'm leaving.
You don't have to leave. I'd like to have you here. Just not quite as much noise or, food attacks. Even though the pigeons were great. This is forget the Russians, man. It's the pigeon invasion. So the point is that there's the assumption that we can save ourselves from World War III by leaving Ukraine, but it really appears to be just the opposite. This is like is this a Hitler situation of appeasement, where Chamberlain went in and made the deal and said, I made peace. We don't want to set Trump up with that brand of peace that Chamberlain had, and so then. Hitler just came up with a new reason why he needed, a new red line cross, and so Putin actually has a dozen or dozens of red lines. North Pole being one, Taiwan being one, North Korea being one, Iran being one. And so our point is that if you're going to use the threat of obliterating the entire world with nuclear holocaust for Ukraine, you don't ever get to use that card again. Because if we're leaving Ukraine to save ourselves from World War III, then we need to nail down that we are getting to save ourselves from World War III forevermore. And when I say this to Putin supporters, they're like, well, no, for this time. And it's like, no. This is for all time. And that is what Zelensky's handing us. Then of nuclear weapons in North Pole and on submarines. To resurrect the spirit of Bush's memo for a world free of nuclear terror, which is the end of Nuke-Heads. Reagan won Cold War with moral mandate. So that is that we need to spend the money. What do we need to spend in order to win? We don't have to spend it. Reagan didn't have to spend all the money that he had set aside because the Soviets collapsed. Putin is at the end of his resources. And so the money is there, the manpower is there, the weapons are there. What's missing is the moral mandate. That's the reason why the Budapest Memorandum is. So anyway, these are just simply building out the card set. Introduce the 40 cards of diplomacy that converts nuclear threats into foreign trade of tit for tat, as the rest of the world does. So you have the example of Putin chasing out the French from 3 African nations, and I can't believe it, Macron saying, well, we're going to send in French soldiers into Ukraine, and Putin responding saying, well, we will nuke you. So we're saying, no, you don't get to threaten with nukes. You can either pull your troops out of Africa, or he gets to send his troops in. That's the way any other country does it, but Putin always leads with nukes. Same thing with Germany and Italy. Putin confiscated $300 billion of their monies. And so Germany and Italy said, well, screw you. We're going to send weapons and soldiers to Ukraine. And Putin said, well, we'll nuke you. And then, Germans backed off. Italians backed off. They're saying, no. You either have to you either have to give the money back, or Italy and Germany gets. Anyway, so this is just what Putin has done with his nuclear threats is allow us to appreciate the tedium of international diplomacy, because without it, what you get is Putin. So Putin is he's a bit of a one card, one hit wonder, nuke. And so each one of his threats corresponds with a clearly defined, easily convertible international diplomacy of tit for tat. And it's really, really important. And that brings us to introduce and then that brings us an end to Putin's nuke mongering. Putin has to stop nuke mongering, but he did it inadvertently by creating a technology greater than nukes. So maybe something of but this originally started with that push when I originally did this a year and a half ago, when I first formalized my presentation. 8, to celebrate Zelensky's win of America's conventional war. Putin lost this war years ago. Russia survives today off the weapons and soldiers taken from Iran, Pakistan, Nepal, Africa, North Korea, and most of all, China. North Korea handed over 1 million rounds of artillery and tons of ammunition. On top of that, that has now gone almost heading towards 10 million. Without these subsidies, Putin's invasion would have collapsed years ago. That is to say that Zelensky already beat Putin's armies with those years of that first military subsidy. Today, Zelensky fights an international alliance from 3 countries. Putin is but a military now without the stand-in for weapons and soldiers from those that made Russia. Has taken 2 million rounds. Anyway, I hadn't finished writing this. So, my friends, I did this because the Democrats, as the new neo-libs, incapable of forming arguments, even when it's in their favor. They come from a communist principle of canceling rather than arguing the point. And it's such a shame, because when it came to the Ukraine, everything was in their favor. And so now we have Biden looking like the bad guy, when in fact, with a minimal amount of support, he would have been a Ronald Reagan. It's not too late to do that. And that is now being handed off to Trump. But Trump has to stop paying Chamberlain and now become Ronald Reagan. And so that is really the punchline of this. Zelensky is now fighting the entire axis of evil. I'm getting very lightheaded. As you can see, my energy is draining. Big aloha from Waikiki, at the Gandhi statue, your signature of 1 million people raising the voice is all it takes to set the moral ground as earned by the Budapest Memorandum, end nuclear war as accomplished by Putin's Orishnik Missile, and to give the strongest hand in this negotiation with Putin by finally recognizing that Zelensky, in fact, has won the war. This is not political. This is a legitimate honor of an extraordinary accomplishment that will now give Trump the ace card for closing it, his peace deals with Putin. Big aloha. Yeah, I'm going to have to lay down. Jai Jai, Srila Prabhupada. Jai Jai, Mahatma Gandhi Ji. Tat Sat, Om Shanti, 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 Hari Om. Gyana Javadanda Segaram Jana Shalakai Takshiram Nitam Jena. Tasma Shri Guru Ve Namah. How much of that did you hear?